starting over. So this episode is for every man who feels stuck in the survival mode, and for every man who was taught to disconnect from his feelings, from his breath, and sometimes from his own worth. So I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's go deep, let's get honest, and let's change the story. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I also really like what you said there in getting honest. And, it's something that I think a lot of people have sort of been programmed to not do.
Exactly. So lovely. Thank you so much for highlighting this part. Yeah, definitely. It's very true, like you said. So we'll dive into this, but first, I definitely love to ask you, like, as you say that we are not the stories that we tell ourselves. So, what was the story you used to tell yourself about masculinity? So, what finally broke that relation?
The story that I was telling myself actually goes back to an early part of my childhood. I actually grew up in a pretty rough environment and
Okay, yeah.
had a lot of chaos, a lot of emotional abuse, and some physical abuse as well. And the specific story, the first one that comes to mind for me was at a very young age. I want to say that I was probably maybe 11 or 12. I heard a parent of mine telling another parent that if I didn't get a basketball scholarship, that I was never going to amount to anything.
Ah,
And that always stood with me. And it wasn't until a few years ago, many years ago, many years after that, into my 40s, that I really kind of started to look into what that actually means. Because that story, it stuck with me for the rest of my life. And to me, that has a lot to do with self-worth. The idea that I could only be worthy if I got a basketball scholarship, because I played basketball at that age and was quite good at that time. It really, told me that I'm not worth anything other than my ability to play basketball. And that sat with me for a long time. And that was one of there's many other stories, um,
true.
that I would tell myself, but that's probably the main big one. And getting over that idea that I don't have any worthiness or self-worth was a really, really struggle. It was a really big struggle to do.
Exactly.
So that's the main story.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this. And um, like from there also, like, was there a specific moment, uh, like realization or a rock bottom, where that story crumbled for you?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
Mhm.
It happened 5 days after my 43rd birthday.
Oh,
I it started with an argument with my wife.
okay.
At this time, let me give you a little
Mm.
backstory, is I had a normal job. On the outside looking in on my life, it seemed pretty regular. I was a blue collar worker in the film industry, working on, very high end Hollywood movies, TV shows, commercials, all the things. I was married. I had 2 kids, 2 beautiful kids. But on the inside, I was really drowning, and
Yeah.
I was really stuck and couldn't actually figure out what was going on. Then 3 days after my 43rd birthday, I got into an argument with my wife,
Hmm.
and something inside of me broke.
Okay.
Uh, I ended that argument. I walked upstairs into my bedroom, and a thought came to mind that I didn't want to live anymore.
Okay.
So I grabbed a bottle of Xanax that was in our cupboard, and I shook it and quickly counted about 25 pills inside. And the next thought that I had was that if I could just drink this whole bottle or down this whole bottle of pills and never wake up again. And to be very honest with you, as I was lifting my arm to my mouth with that bottle, an image of my two young kids entered my mind. And it was of them downstairs laughing and playing the game Uno. And to be very honest with you, that's what stopped my arm from lifting that bottle to my mouth.
Yeah.
The idea that I would never get to see them grow up, and the idea that I would leave them without a father is what shifted my entire being.
True.
The next thing that I had to do after that was make probably one of the biggest decisions of my adult life, and biggest decision of being a man. And that was to decide to put myself in the hospital.
Correct.
So I had a friend drive me to UCLA Medical Center, and I checked myself into the behavioral health unit of UCLA, where I spent 5 days in the hospital. And 2 days after being there, my wife came to visit me, not to offer any support, but just to tell me that she was filing for divorce.
Yeah.
And so that became what I thought was a dark moment into an even darker moment. And it's really what started what I like to call the dark night of the soul, and my journey to changing my life. So I spent 5 days at UCLA, and then after that, the doctors recommended that I go to a residential treatment center.
Correct.
And most people think of a residential treatment center as sort of, well, at least in the States here, I think the view is of like drug rehab or alcohol rehab. And for me, it wasn't. For some people there, it definitely was. People that, that I was there with. But for me, I like to call it my mental health college experience, because I learned more about psychology in that time than I ever had before. And in that program, I woke up every single day and I came downstairs to this decrepit old living room that served as our classroom. And I learned nearly every modality of psychology. We had classes every hour on the hour from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I learned a new modality of psychology, and that lasted for 25 days. And I learned everything about CBT, DBT, ACT, all of the acronyms that come in psychology. But we also learned about emotional regulation. We learned about breath work. We learned about meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, yoga, all of these things that are now tools that I carry on my tool belt for my own growth, but also what I now share with my clients. And I realized at that moment that I was building a tool belt of tools for my own self-awareness, and to build a tool belt for emotional regulation.
Oh, okay.
That was the biggest change. And when I left that treatment, when I got out of there, I realized that I have a different purpose in this life, and that I have a responsibility to share what I've learned and to share my experience and to share my story. So maybe one person, or hopefully more, can hear my story and not have to go through the same thing that I went through.
Mhm. Wow, amazing. I mean, thank you so much for sharing this. There are a lot of things to learn from here. Yeah. And
Um,
a lot of men still don't recognize that their mental burnout is tied to their old story. And sometimes they confuse exhaustion for the weakness. And this is where we need to pause and ask, like, whose story are we actually living? So, yeah, that's great. So, also, like, that what do you think that men most need but rarely ask for in that moment of darkness? What is it?
mm. To be honest with you, I think
Mhm.
connection.
Okay.
I feel like men in our generation, in our society today,
Mm.
lack connection.
Okay.
The understanding that we don't have to go through this experience in life alone.
Mm.
And that I think there's this unspoken sort of code of men today that they have to do everything alone.
Mm.
I like to call it the lone wolf syndrome.
Mm.
And I think in 2025,
Mm.
the biggest word in society as a whole, also very, very big for men, is connection. We have this false sense of connection with social media and
Mm.
the entertainment that happens today, and that makes it feel like you're connecting with people, but you're not actually truly connecting. You're not in front of that person. You're not feeling the emotion, the unspoken emotions that a person carries when you're sitting next to them. There's an energy that is being transferred, and that is incredibly nourishing.
Mm. Very true. Yeah. And so, wow, that's lovely. And uh how did you start regulating your nervous system? Like, um what were the first practices that helped you drop from your head into your body? What do you have
Mm.
to say?
That's a great question. One of the first ones that I practiced comes from dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's an acronym called TIPS. It's TIPP.
Mm.
And to be honest with you, I don't remember the full acronym,
Mm.
but the first part of it, the T part of it, is temperature, and it's a temperature change. So what I learned to do is um, is to go into my kitchen, and if I have time, it depends on where I am on the emotional scale. If I was really, really angry and really, really emotionally dysregulated, I might need to do something quicker than what is recommended. But um, one of the things to do is to fill up a bowl with water and ice
Mhm.
and dunk your face in it. Put
Okay.
your face in an bowl. And what that does is that actually tricks your mind into thinking that you're going into hypothermia. It's called the dive reflex. And your body and your mind then starts to slow down the system to to
Mm.
save to save the heat and the energy for the most important parts. So it slows your heart rate, it slows your blood pumping, and it starts actually putting more
Mm.
emphasis into your brain, which will physically switch you out of that part of your brain that is
Exactly.
that is activated and into conservation mode, which
Mm.
slows down your emotional reactivity.
True.
A really easy way, and this is what I did most of the time
Mm.
when I was feeling very activated, is I would just go and grab ice cubes and find the two biggest ice cubes I could get in my freezer, and I would hold them in my hands and I would squeeze them
Okay.
as long as I possibly could before it hurt too much, for the ice to be in my hands. And then after that, I would then put those same ice cubes above or below my eyeball. It's a similar idea of dunking your head in water, but just a lot quicker to get there rather than taking the time to find a bowl and put the water in and the ice cubes and you could just grab ice cubes out of the freezer. Um, Also, I'm a big advocate of exercise. I kind of mentioned earlier, the basketball playing is that I grew up as an athlete. So for me, and this is just for me, is moving my body is one of the best ways to really change your mood or to change that feeling that you're stuck in that moment. Um, in going back to that acronym of dialectical behavioral therapy tips, the I part of it is intense exercise. So running, walking, moving your body, exercising, push-ups, anything that you can do to really get your blood pumping can help move endorphins and move hormones throughout your body, which can shift your mood. Um, for me, it's running is my thing. If I'm really stuck on something or I'm really upset about something, I will just go on a run and really put intention into how I'm breathing in that run. Um, yeah, that's a big one. A more recent one that I just fell in love with and that I make a regular practice now is breath work.
Wow.
I'm a big advocate of breath work. I've had some amazing sessions with a breathwork coach
Okay.
and facilitator, at a yoga studio where we do what is it called? It's holotropic breath work.
Oh, okay.
But any kind of breath work, box breathing, circular breathing, putting intention into how you're breathing and really focusing on the inhale and the exhale, and it can really shift your thinking and really shift your emotional reactivity. It's a really a great thing for regulating your nervous system and something that I've learned to do daily.
Okay. Got it. That's lovely, amazing. And like let's talk about the epidemic, right? We don't talk about enough because emotional suppression, which is the very, very important part. Like, why do so many men stay stuck in the silence? Like, what breaks the loop?
What breaks the loop? That's such a great question. Ah, I think, it's really interesting. I think the way to answer that is to kind of go back to the source of why men in this generation feel this way. And I kind of came up with this idea.
Yeah.
Uh, Actually heard it from a comedian at a comedy show.
Okay.
Said this kind of thing that really stuck with me, and this applies, I think, mostly to the American history and sort of how we uh, generations have passed in the States. Is that I believe that we are a generation of men that have been raised by war veterans who were raised by war veterans and those men in the previous generations were taught not to talk about all of the horrific things that they experienced while they were at war. I mean, and this goes back to, the Vietnam War, to World War II and Korean War, and all of these generations of men who were just really trying to save their families by not speaking about all the horrific things that they have. And the ramifications of that is now you have generations of men like myself in my 40s and the men in the younger generations below me in their 30s and 20s who never learned how to actually talk about what is actually happening and what's going on with them. So I think the way to fix that is to really offer our own stories and our own sharing and our own space to be vulnerable and express and feel safe expressing what's going on. One of the big things that I am a big advocate of, and that I do now, is that I work as a facilitator in men's work and in men's
Okay.
circles. So I offer a space for men to share, to feel safe, to share vulnerably what's going on in their lives,
Okay.
and being able to have a group of men all sit together and feel safe in sharing. And I have the luxury of, as we can, we've discussed here in this podcast interview, is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I have no problem getting vulnerable, and it's almost like a superpower for me. So as a facilitator in these groups, I'm able to model vulnerability by sharing a deep story or a deep situation that's coming up in my life. And what that does is that lets everyone else in the circle know that they're safe to actually open up and speak from their hearts. So I think really connection and safety is the answer. And community.
True. Very true. Yep. Wow. And lovely. That's really lovely. And you rebuilt your life after like nearly losing it. So what surprised you the most about the healing journey?
Mm,
Mm.
so many surprises. uh I think one of the biggest ones that comes to mind right now is just
Mm.
kind of social programming.
Understood.
The stories that we tell ourselves,
Mhm.
and how that kind of, fits into our lives, like having an understanding of I may not feel this way
Mm.
because of the way that I grew up. Or, a,
Correct.
a big thing that I study and that I'm very fascinated with is parental modeling.
Uh,
And this is an idea that, we, as when we're young and as children, from the ages around 2 to say 8 or 9,
Mm.
is when our subconscious gets imprinted with how we show up to the world, how we view the world, how we view relationships, how we view parenting, how we view what a man should be, how we view what a woman should be. And that plays a huge role in our adult lives.
Mm.
And what ends up happening, I think, and this is a bit of a generalization, but um, is that you're either going to unconsciously follow what your parents modeled for you,
Mhm.
or you're going to do the opposite. Um, and I think even when you're conscious in doing the opposite, sometimes in certain situations, that unconscious thinking shows up, and you even end up doing the same things that your parents may have modeled for you when you were a child.
Mm.
So I think it's really important to really dig into your own history and how your parents or your generations beyond your parents, the grandparents,
Right.
um, shaped, unconsciously how you view the world, and being able to see that and being able to see how, like, I'll give you a really great example. My partner, uh, in my marriage that is now
Right.
ended, I was able to learn how I was showing up based on what my parents showed me. I was also able to see how she was showing up based on how her parents raised her.
Mm.
And then we were able to look at that and kind of see where our relationships was really working, and where the relationship was really falling apart. And that was incredibly informative for how my, of making the decision to end the relationship. But that all comes down from the parental modeling, and whether that's going to line up, or really in figuring out, like, what is it that modeling is shaping you. Again, it comes down to those stories,
Mm.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. And so let's challenge this one basically. Like, do you think the masculine needs to be redefined, or do we just need to remember what healthy masculinity really is?
Mm, That's a great question. I'm very fascinated with this kind of subject, and I've done a bit of research in it, and follow a couple of leaders that are really interested in this. That you know, there's two ways that we can address this. One of them, and this is something that I believe is really important, is that there's this old mantra. At least, again, I can only really speak for my experience in the States, but this old mantra of you put your head down, you bury your emotions, you work hard and provide for your family.
Right.
And I believe that that is old and doesn't apply to
Mhm.
society today.
Exactly.
I think that, again, at least in the States, is the masculine and feminine kind of dynamic, it doesn't fit into that mantra. And that we have, equal opportunities
Mm.
for people, for men and women, to be providers of an income or caregivers. And I think that each individual person
Yeah.
can actually carry both masculine and feminine qualities
True.
within them. And I think it's more of like a polarity, in that, like a yin and yang, where at one point my partner may be in a masculine essence, or divine masculine feeling, and I am naturally going to step into my own feminine in supporting her in that. And then
Mhm.
it may switch later on, where later that day we may be trying to figure out what restaurant we're going to go to for dinner, and I may step in and say, "Hey, I think we should go do this. How does this sound for you?" And that's me truly being in my masculine and making a decision and including her in the decision. So it's not a sort of toxic masculine feature, but it's being that decisive person of making a choice. And that allows her to then step into her feminine and feel supported and feel guided to say, "Hey, that sounds great. Thank you for taking that initiative to make that call, or to present those choices." Um, and I think that in the it's easy to use the example of a relationship dynamic.
Mm.
Um, but as you know, as a masculine man, I think there we really could use a little bit more decisiveness,
Mhm.
but in a soft, caring way, in that not being sort of dominant.
Mm.
But there's a difference, between a fine line between being dominant and decisive. And I think that comes in including, like the example I used about
Mm.
dinner, including
True.
a question into that. I think that we should go to dinner and have Italian food or
Mm.
Indian food. How does that sound for you? And then my partner may be like, we had Italian food yesterday or the day before. I think Indian food sounds good right now. And then
Mm.
I say, okay, great. Let's do that. Here's the restaurant. We'll plan to leave at 6 o'clock. That's still me being in my masculine, but opening the space for her to be involved in the decision making and feel like she's supported in that, but not having to make the choice, or for her to step into her masculine to be
Mm.
the decision maker.
Correct. Very true.
Does that answer your question?
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, lovely. So, that's amazing. And any suggestion or the advice you'd like to share with the listeners today?
Oh, I would say the biggest advice is to really, if you are feeling
Mm.
a sense of loneliness, or that you
Right.
don't have a community,
Mm.
reach out to your closest friends or your family, and make an effort to connect.
Okay.
I have this thing that I learned from another coach that I do with a friend, that we have a code that anytime we're having a hard time,
Mm,
each one of us will text, "Do you have 3 minutes?"
mm,
And what that means is that's an easy way of telling a friend of mine, "Hey, I need some support right now. Do you have a moment to talk?" And I can't claim to figure this out. I think it was Simon. I can't remember his last name, but I heard that from him, and I've used it myself. And I have a friend that we use that, and it's a different way of being able to ask somebody, "Hey, uh, do you can we talk?" A lot of times people are busy in their own moments, but saying those key words of, "Do you have 3 minutes?" tells the other person, "Oh, that I this person is having a rough moment, like, I need to support them." So that's a little bit more detailed and kind of, nuanced of an answer to your question. But I think the biggest advice is if you're feeling lonely, reach out to people. There are friends and family around you that wanna connect and that want to be a part of that and want the best for you. They just don't know that you're needing support. So being able to actually ask for support is a very, very powerful thing.
yeah, very true. Lovely. Great. So, what a powerful conversation today, dear listeners. If you are listening to this right now and something's tired in your gut, then don't ignore it. That's your body saying, there's more for you, more life, more feeling, more connection. And you are not your trauma. You are not your paycheck. You are not your past. So, massive gratitude to Aaron for showing up raw, real, and ready to rewrite the story of what it means to be a man today. So, thank you so much, Aaron. And if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the best medium to connect?
I just launched my website.
Mm,
It's at aarongambel.com.
mm,
It's Gambel, AARONGAMBEL.com. I also am on Instagram, and TikTok, at Aaron M. Gamble.
mm,
But please reach out, connect. If anything stirred something up in you, like you said,
mm.
Avik, you know, I'm here to help. My story is here to help others, and just know that
Correct.
you are not alone.
Mm. Very true. Very true. Lovely. Great. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and stay human. This is your host, Avik, signing off from Mind Over Masculinity, where courage meets conversation. So, thank you so much.